everyone, and welcome to our channel. This is Kaylin from White and Reverie. So we've been getting asked a lot about how we color grade our wedding films. Lately we have been using LUTS from Lutify Me to help us grade our films. And so I just wanted to share with you guys our top 6 favorite LUTs from Lutify Me that can help you create some amazing cinematic wedding films. So I also like to really focus on skin tone in our wedding films. So the 6 LUTs that I've chosen will be focused with an attention and detail to skin tone overall, first and foremost. So just a quick preface also, before we start grading anything, you have to make sure that your monitor is properly calibrated. So we are actually editing on an iMac 5K Retina. And so we have the Datacolor Spider 5 Elite software that we've been using. You can use the Spider 5 Pro as well, and that's what we've used to calibrate our monitor. By default, it's usually pretty saturated and contrasted. The MacBook Pro laptops seem to be a little bit closer to the actual look that you want to be calibrated. So, but iMac definitely needed some calibration before. So keep that in mind before you start grading. So I'll have a link to that in the description, to the Spider software that you can check out if you're interested in calibrating your computer. So, all right, so let's go ahead and dive in. So we have 6 LUTs that we're using from Lutify. We have different scenarios and different exteriors and interior shots that we want to focus on. So you can kind of see we also have a black and white option. We also have one for reception lighting. And so here is the first one that we're going to dive into. So before, this is what the film looked like. And this one has a lot of good warmth to it. So we also really wanted to showcase and make his jacket pop a little bit more. Also, we have some exterior shots with a lot of greenery and everything. So we wanted the colors to be really nice. So we went ahead and added this LUT that you can kind of see really kind of showcases that feel. If we're using, by the way, so whenever you download your LUTs from Lutify, we're actually going to be using the professional package. That's the ones that we're going over today. That one has the ones that we're pulling from. We're going to be using some from the Cine Luxe package, from the teal and orange package, also I believe the contemporary color films package, and then obviously the black and white. So that's the one that we're using, is the professional package if you're interested in these LUTs that we're working with. Also, we have a link in the description with a coupon code that'll get you 10% off on that package if you're interested. With this film, before we do any of our grading, we like to go ahead and make sure that all of our shots are properly balanced and consistent when they're next to each other. With this shot, you can see before we had a little bit overblown a little bit more, and the exposure wasn't dialed in, so we went ahead and dropped down our mid-tones, and then we increased our highlights a little bit, and then also we kind of warmed up our mid-tones in this range right here. Let's go ahead and pull up our window that has all of our scopes on it. So we actually like to use just this one right here. This one is the Rgb Parade. This helps us dial in proper exposure and white balance. So if you are looking at this shot, since this is a white dress, you can tell that the red, green, and blue channel is pretty consistent across the board, so that tells us that this is white. Also, it lets us know if we are clipping above 100, which is on the IRE scale. 100 is going to be pure white, 0 is pure black, so that kind of lets you know. This was actually shot on a Sony a7S, and because of that, you can see that we actually have more data information above the 100 IRE scale that we can actually dial back. So if you go over to your exposure in Final Cut Pro X, you can actually dial that down, and you can see you're getting a little bit more information from this range that is a little bit blown out. So just to keep that in mind. So all these shots have been properly balanced, whether they are balanced with making sure white balance is set or our actual colors look good and consistent. So once that's done, then we go ahead and find a shot that we feel is pretty consistent across the board. And in that case, it's this shot. And then we go ahead and add our LUT, and we decide which LUT looks good. All right, let's go ahead and open up Color Finale, and inside here, so Color Finale is a plugin that you can purchase separately from Color Grading Central. It gives you a lot of functions like your color wheels, curves, LUT utility, and then also vector-based grading. So those are 4 really great functions that you can use that are not natively supported in Final Cut Pro X. If you need a free LUT loader, there's one from Pixel Film Studios, I believe, that you can check out. We will link to that in the description as well. So for this LUT, we wanted to use a package, the Cine Luxe package, and we really like this one called Kunda, or at least that's how we think we pronounce it. And this one you can see before and after, and we can dial the opacity to be intense or not as intense. We like to have this right around 60%. We feel like the greens have some really nice, like they're not too saturated, looks pretty decent. The blue jacket still pops really well, and the skin has a really nice soft pink look to it. So we also went ahead and added a curve to it and added a slight S curve, so you can kind of see how that looks before and after, just to add a little bit more contrast, and it also makes the colors pop a little bit more in the mid-tones and shadow range. And then we can go ahead and look through all the shots to see if it looks consistent. And here we have before and after. And with this grade, you can see, so the greens are very green, which is fine, but this one we wanted to kind of dial them down, to saturate a little bit, make them darker, bring the yellow range up in this right here, and you can see the blue jacket pops really nice. So we really like this LUT from Lutify called Kunda. So that is the first LUT from Lutify that we recommend, called Kunda. Looks pretty good. So you can also see right here that it has a really nice a pop for one of the bridesmaids right here. This is mixed lighting actually in the hotel, but it actually pops really well right there. So. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the second LUT. All right, so the next LUT that we wanted to recommend is this other LUT right here. This is part of the teal and orange package. So this wedding, let's see the before. This was actually in Washington, and this was a couple, and there was a lot of earthy tones going on throughout the day, so we wanted to make sure that reflected in the grade. And so we wanted to get rid of a lot of the saturation in the colors and just focus on the poses and the movement and the composition and the lighting. So we decided to go with this grade right here. And as you can see, we added film convert, but that is only for the grain on this edit right here. So let's go ahead and hide that and disable that before. And in color finale, we can actually open that up and we can see what we've done. So this one, we actually used 2 different LUTs. So by default, we switched to this one is a teal and orange package. So if you go over to the teal and orange, we can actually choose Merrick, and we can enable that, and we put that at about 70%. And then we looked for another one that's called Minkar and added that one at right around 15%, and you'll see why in a second. So before, with just this LUT, it doesn't look impressive right now. It looks too saturated, the orange is a little too harsh, the skin doesn't pop, and that is where curves come in. So with the LUTs, you also like to play around with the curves. This one we wanted to raise more of the shadows, and we wanted this to look pretty even, so we added that, and you can see it totally changes the look of that LUT just based off of using your curves. So with this one, before the curves and then after the curves, now this just has a really nice pop to it. We also went ahead and added this other LUT and layered it on here, and just gets a little bit more of that contrasted darker range in the skin tones, and adds a little bit more depth to it in our opinion. So that is, those are the 2 LUTs that we used, Merrick and Minkar for the second wedding film, and then we used curves to go ahead and add some shadows back into that mid-tone area. Before, you can actually see, let's look at before. Before, we had to go ahead, this one just was flaring a lot because you can see the sun flare on this GH5. This is actually a Voigtlander, I think this is a 42.5 lens. We've switched back and forth between that and the 17.5, but most of this is the 42.5 lens. So you can see here, we went ahead and adjusted those. This one, let's just check this. Right here, all we did was we just shifted a little bit more of warmth into it. So we wanted to have a little more of a warmer tone, like I said, with the earthy tones and stuff. And this one, we actually had to do a lot more to it. So before, you can see this is what we're looking at. The greens are extremely saturated. We're having a lot of reflection on her face from the light hitting his shirt and bouncing up. And so we wanted to fix this. And the way we did that was, let's just dial down these shots. So the first one we did is just a basic just balance of the light. Want to make sure we're not clipping anything. And then we dropped a little bit of the saturation in the shadows and the highlights. And then we went ahead and shifted the highlights into the blue range and some shadows down in the yellow range. And then we also used Color Finale's vector-based grading, which this is really why we love Color Finale and recommend it. We can actually take the red range of the skin tone and we can dial whether that just range if we want that to be pink or yellow. You can do the hue and saturation. You can do that in Premiere as well, except that you cannot use the there's no luminosity slider in Premiere. So this advantage is that you can also change the brightness of that color spectrum. And then again, we shifted the greens to be a little more on the warmer side. And then the yellows, we shifted away from being pink right there. So you can see before and after. That is what we did. And then we went ahead and did one more correction to just kind of bring it back into the range that we liked. And it is okay to, so say we had the look here, we go ahead and added the grade, and then we look back at it and we're like, you know what, this still doesn't really feel like the same kind of skin tone colors. So you can go back to the original shot and then do some more correction. And that's what we did here to make sure that it's balancing between all shots. So the process is correcting, balancing these shots, then adding the grade, and then fine-tuning the grade, and then coming back and restructuring the colors to make sure that they still stay consistent after the secondary and color grade is added to it. All right, next grade, we're going to go over here, and this is one of our favorites right here. This is actually also a LUT that Lutify actually made for us. So we were able to give this away to you guys, so you can sign up for our newsletter, and we can send you a link in an email to this LUT that you can get for free. So this one is actually our Lutify LUT for us. And this one has more of it's more along the lines of a teal and orange look with some good contrast to it. We also decided to dip the shadows in this curve just to kind of bring a little bit more contrast to the image. And this is the grade. Actually, let's look at the grade before. And this was shot on a Sony A7S, and this was in Malibu, California. So once we add the grade, you can see he has an actual, it's like a green velvet jacket, which is amazing. So usually colors will shift that if LUTs are too harsh. This one keeps it in a nice range, and then the skin tone pops really well. We get some nice reds over here, and even with it flaring, it looks pretty good. So you can see before. There, we can probably add some more saturation if we want to. This one, let's see what we did here. This is before, and then like we said in Sony, you have some more highlight information that you can pull back. So right here, we're able to pull back some of the highlights and retain some of that right there. And then we boosted some of the saturation as well, and then just dipped the highlights to make them a little bit warmer. So we're just adjusting each individual shot so that the LUT works across all the shots evenly. Especially with this one, which I was on a different camera or a different lens. This was on a 135, and before it just was a little bit too dark. We wanted to boost it up a little bit with our exposure, so we went ahead and increased the midtones and highlights, and then dropped a little bit of the shadows, pushed back some saturation because we once you boost some of the midtones and everything, as you drop it, you can see more saturation comes into the colors. So if you boost it, you also need to boost some of the saturation. And then also our colors, we went ahead and cooled them off a little bit. All right, so here is after the grade. I feel like the skin tones look really good. Some decent saturation around them. Maybe a little bit harsh right there. So say we might want to shift this a little bit. We can actually, let's go ahead and raise the curve a little bit more here. So there we go, and then it kind of takes down a little bit of the saturation as well on the skin. So this looks a lot prettier and even across all shots. All right, so let's move on to the fourth grade. This one's gonna be a black and white. Here is before, which is some really great shots. This was a very moody shot in LA. This was shot on a Sony a7S as well. And then we went ahead and made this one black and white. And what's really interesting, obviously, so here we added film grain, and this one we'd probably crank up even a little bit harder. So here we have it at around 120 with film converts grain, and you might even want to crank it up to like 190 or something, just really extreme depending on the look that you're going for. So this shot right here, I feel like it really showcases, we really wanted to have a really nice black and white look. So actually let's dial this down to like 160, and then we'll go ahead and hide this. We'll go ahead and open up Color Finale, and here we have the LUT that we use is called Botine. I'm not even sure if I say these names right, guys. All right, so the black and white films, you get a lot of options. The ones that do not have prefixes before it are some of the older LUTs. This one, these are part of the newer packages, and here we're using this one, and we have it at 100%, obviously, because if you have it less than that, you're going to introduce some of the color because it's a black and white LUT. And then here we decided to roll off our highlights a little bit, so just kind of soft right around here. If it was bright enough, you'd be able to see that, but we don't want our skin tones. Our skin tones should be right around 70 to 75 anyway in the brightness level. So you can see, obviously this is part of his cuffs. Cufflinks is the brightest section, so that's the brightest. We still want to keep it moody, so we don't want to make it too bright. And then we went ahead and just increased the, and kind of faded it a little bit. And you can do that by just dragging the bottom part, and you can kind of see the image fading just slightly. Maybe bring up the section point right here and fade it even more, depending on the look that you're going for. And here you get a nice kind of, so here's a black shot, here's a nice faded black and white look. Some of the LUTs already have some fades to it. This is just if you want to finesse the LUT even more in the overall image. So by default, I already like this a lot, and so you can just add a little bit of a fade to it. And that before, and there it's after. We're going to go ahead and keep it on for now. And if you need to go back to each individual shot, so here is before and after. You can't really tell because this one is actually just subtly brought down. So if you change highlight information, it will respond to black and white differently too. So something to keep in mind when you're using a black and white grade. Here is some of the shots right here. Obviously it's still rendering, but you can see whenever I kind of zoom in right there, kind of see this is just kind of what it looks like right here. You got some nice, I feel like the grain really makes black and white pop a lot, so getting some good grain added to the imagery will look beautiful. So, all right, and then on to our fifth grade. I wanted to showcase some different scenarios. So this wedding we have light inside, and then we have light from outside, so you're going to get some blue light in the background, but we just wanted to kind of showcase a really good grade that we felt would work for certain receptions. And this one we really like. You can see the difference before and after. It really brings more attention to the skin tone, still has some really nice blue behind it. So right here you can see the skin still gets some more of the orange and pinkish hues to it, which we like. It's not too red around the shadows, which sometimes happens with LUTs that are not optimized for skin tones. And then this one is kind of pushed a little bit more to the teal range, the blue. You can see here's the blue and then push towards it. And I like the way this looks a lot. So here is it graded. So that's what we had. Now before, we actually had to correct each shot because our white balance was not set properly. This was on a Sony a7S. And here is what it looked like before. We had a very yellow look to it. It didn't match, like you can tell that the white balance is off. So we had to do a lot of correction on this. And what we did is we would just boost the highlights into the blue range, as you can see like that, and a little bit of the mid-tones into the blue range. Saturation was fine, and then our exposure, we just dropped down the highlights just a little bit. Now we went ahead and before, you can see that it's already clipping. So usually, we prepare the image before we're adding the LUT, which would be somewhere around here. But because we've already added our actual grade, then we'd come back to the actual shot, and then we could tell that, okay, if we had it too low, it's not where we want it to be. So right where we had it and that's where we like to have our highlights. We try to roll off our highlights somewhere around like 85 to 90. That's just a personal preference. So it's not pure white. Depends on what you're going for though. So this one for receptions, we feel like this is a good grade. And this one, let's go into it. It is actually a mixture of two. So we had Merrick, which we've shown you before over here a little bit, but then we mixed that with Kunda, which is part of that first one. And we get this look. So what's cool about it is that you can mix these LUTs to create your own looks. So we used 70% on this one, 70% on the top one. And what's really great is you can actually have, if you're using Color Finale, you can see that here's the LUT added, and it's kind of harsh. Like it feels very harsh, and you can just change the overall effect of both those LUTs that are already balanced out to your liking. So here, I think right around 70 will look the best for this scenario. So we went ahead and changed that to 70. And then last but not least, we have our 6th grade. And this one, again, another type of like earthy tones. We have a lot of browns and greens and pale colors a little bit. So with this one, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't too harsh of a grade, but you can see that we faded a little bit of the shadows so that they're a little bit raised, and then rolled off our highlights. So we didn't want to spread out and make a very contrasted image. So before you have this right here, which still looks nice, don't get me wrong, but then we wanted to add just a subtle look. So we didn't want to overdo the grade. And so again, we find a shot that feels like it has a lot of true colors to it. And this frame right here, when you're deciding your LUT, this felt like it had, you know, we have some browns, a lot of the greens, good skin tone, good balanced shot. So this is the one we used as a reference whenever we were choosing our grade, our LUT from Lutify. So again, we can go ahead and let's turn off the curve. We went to the cinematic, or actually we went to the contemporary color films, and we chose Celtic. Celtic was the one that we went with. And this one, you can see it looks really good. For our curves though, again, we want to fix, so sometimes, let me see if you can zoom in, with the skin tones, sometimes you can get some highlights that are pretty harsh on some hot spots on skin tones. The way to combat that in curves is if you just drop this range right here, this will actually even out those hot spots. So let's go ahead and turn this on, and you can see it just kind of has like a creamy look to the skin tone that happens whenever you drop that range. So, you know, you can actually, let's pull it back up a little bit so you can see that range. If you go too far, you're going to get some of that weird gray and reddish tint to it if you're too close to your curve. That's why you want to slope your curves really well. And if you get too harsh, obviously it's going to do that. So you can just kind of keep on finessing with it the way you like. But this is by default, I kind of usually drop it right around here, and that gets us some really good balance. And then obviously we rolled off our highlights here, and then we also raised up our shadows. So before you have you can see the blacks and everything here, and then you can just raise that up a little bit and just add a little bit more of that fade. And that's because we felt like that fit for this a forest wedding that we're filming. It kind of had that look to it. So here's a good contrasting image, which is still nice, but for this wedding, we wanted to go with more of an earthy, pale look to it, but we still had some good skin tone. So before you have these shots, and then after we went ahead and added it right there, before and after, before and after. So we felt like it looked really well. Again, we had to, you know, obviously this is the shot before, which was a little bit too cool. We wanted to raise some of the midtones and tweak some of the colors and make sure it was warm. So we went ahead and you know, dropped our saturation, or dropped our highlights here in this shot and raised the midtones. And then we went ahead and lowered the highlights and midtones in this range here to add some more warmth to the shot. So just taking your mid-range, and you can just push it wherever you like. And then it got us the look. And then in Color Finale, again, we just used it just for the curves, just to bump up. Because instead, in Final Cut Pro X, instead of using these ranges here, you can actually use curves, which is more beneficial because you lock your highlights and your shadows points, and then you just move the exposure inside. So curves is really helpful. Start using curves whenever you're grading, and mixing them with LUTs just really help fine-tune your grade. And that's how we got this look. for this one. All right, so those were the top 6 LUTs that we loved from Lutify Me. Again, one was Kunda, 2 was Merrick, and also we had Minkar. And then also we have this custom one that Lutify Me made for us, which we can also offer to you guys if you want to sign up for our newsletter. We'll have a link in our description. In the video, also nice black and white. And then we also used Merrick again and Kunda, and then also another one called Heltic. So those were some of our favorites that we just wanted to share with you guys, that you can use them on your wedding films and create really amazing cinematic wedding films that have good skin tone and great colors throughout your films. Also, if you're interested in purchasing the Lutify Me package, again, we use the professional package is the one that we've actually been working with, and this is the one to get that we recommend. It's only $60 and you have an enormous amount of LUTs. So it is a subscription base, which means every year after that it's a $20 increase. But what's really cool about that is they are constantly updating their LUTs that you can use in your films, and so they're adding new ones all the time. So we actually have kept our subscription as well because we felt like it was really helpful, and we kept on getting newer LUTs with them, so that was really great. But check out their website, see if you like some of the things that they have. So hopefully this tutorial is helpful for you all. If you have any questions that I didn't explain well in this video, just leave them in the comment section below, and also make sure that you subscribe to our channel. We will be releasing more content with how we edit, some gear reviews, as well as anything else that you want to know. Also, we host one-on-one workshops for other wedding filmmakers, so if you want to dive in deeper and learn some more, feel free to reach out to us on our website, and we would love to connect with you and share some more information and knowledge that we've learned over the years. Thanks for watching.